last week, remember, I gave you the big reveal. The opportunity for us to build a Hope Center, to establish a Hope Center in the Dominican Republic. And if you weren't here, you didn't know, the Hope Center is simple. This is the power of partnerships, okay? What this is, Connect Caribbean Missions has been working in the Dominican Republic for over 25 years. My friend, one of my overseers, Derek Fry, his family started this work years ago, and this dream came about. There's something more powerful we can do by forging partnerships. So what they established is that a Hope Center is a connection with a local church in the Dominican where they are the ground for the Hope Center. The church and its people become the participants. They're the ones that man the Hope Center. And it is an intent to reach kids within that community and help them in areas of education, spiritual empowerment, to know the truth of the gospel, to be raised and discipled in the truth of the gospel, to have recreation, to have fun, to make connections, and by such, reaching their families. Because this is not for the families of the kids in the church. This is for families in the community. And so they take the opportunity to vet those families. They know what the program is, that the parents are willing to sign off and say, yeah, not a problem, that my kid's involved in this program. And through such, those families become a part of the church community. And it's a way to reach the entire community to see transformation. And it's all possible because Connect Caribbean Mission worked with a group called One Child, which is an international child sponsorship program, who take the responsibility when people individually donate to help a child. And that's what we're asking, is people to champion a child, okay? That One Child receipts them for their giving. They take the ability for correspondence. Because remember, I told you, this isn't just about sponsoring a child. It's about building relationship. It's about telling a child that there's a champion believing in you, praying for you, encouraging you, wanting you to be everything God designed and created you to be. And it is my privilege and my joy to be able to help you reach your full, your full potential for God's plan for your life. See, that's why it's cool, because you and I get a chance to make stories that last for eternity. Although corporately we're working, and here's the part. This is so cool, because I've been building a relationship with the church. That's my first trips down there. Vetted out a church that we would find, a working relationship with. So Pastor Jose, I have been meeting with. And here's one of those reasons. Remember I told you this is a Kairos moment. Remember the very first message in this series? Kairos moments, opportunities, doors that God brings to us. It's so brilliant, because one of the things that I've noticed, that it's a God work that's been happening here within Vertical Church, is a large increase in Hispanic population here at our church, which is so amazing, because now we are not dependent on translators. We have people that automatically can go into the situations and not be dependent with not knowing the language. This is so beautifully orchestrated that God's been working. And that's why our lead for this is Pastor Juan. And here's the brilliance of it. Pastor Juan's wife is Dominican by birth. Okay? God's just been weaving this whole thing together. So Pastor Juan and I have been meeting with Pastor Jose and part of the people from Caribbean Mission, and we've been walking literally like, hey guys, how can we as a church empower and do, what do you need? How can we help you? Because why? God blesses us to be a blessing. And you know what, guys? As much as we have been a blessing here and will continue to be, making an impact in our community, you know what? God's given us reach to do so even beyond that, because here's the power of partnerships. The New Testament, think about it in this respect. The Apostle Paul, what he was able to accomplish in his mission was done so because local churches that he had responsibility to plant took up the responsibility of funding and making what he was doing possible through their generosity. Now, did they have needs in their own community? Of course. They met the needs of their community, but they went above and beyond that end of it to help out the gospel to spread into the world. And that's why it's powerful, because listen to me. Let me tell you this. The very first time, because we all want God to move greater in our midst, do we not? interesting. God reminded me about this in worship this morning. And that's the very first time the word glory is ever used in the Bible, okay? Was used in reference to the children of Laban and Jacob. Now, if you're not familiar with the story, Jacob had gone to his uncle's, and he had wanted, he was working for his uncle. He saw Rachel. He wanted to marry one of his daughters, and so he said, I'll work 7 years for your daughter's hand in marriage, right? But his uncle was a shyster. I mean, literally. I mean, the dude gypped them, multiple ways. In fact, it was one of those areas Jesus obviously must have turned water into wine, because you had to be, drinking during a wedding celebration not to know that the woman that you're with isn't the one you thought it was. But yeah, that's a crazy story for another time. But listen, no, Leah was the first one he gave to him. He's like, no, wait a minute. I wanted Rachel. So he worked another 7 years, right? And then Laban, Jacob still didn't have, he had 2 wives. Started to get a whole tribe of people behind him, but he got no wages. So he figures out this deal with his uncle, and his uncle keeps changing his wages. He keeps trying to manipulate the system and rip Jacob off. But God blesses Jacob. Each turn that the enemy, there's the good news for you guys. God knows how to prosper his people no matter what the situation is. And so Jacob followed the directions that God had given him, okay? And here's what happens. God blesses Jacob, and then Laban's sons, this is the first time the word glory is ever used. Laban's son says, Jacob has taken all of our father's glory. Now, the word kabod in Hebrew, that's the word glory. And literally, its definition in Hebrew is it's weighty, And we talk about the presence of God, but let me tell you this. There's something connected, to wealth and generosity that's associated with the glory of God. Because God is love, is he not? And love's most natural and easy expression is generosity. Why? Because God so loved the world that he what? Gave his one and only son. And you all know, if you've ever been in love, giving just is natural. It's it. People that you love, you're excited. You consider it an honor, an opportunity. You never think about cost. When think about the days when people were dating. They shouldn't stop when there's a ring on it and it's after the altar. No, but listen, you know what? There's thinking about it, no problem. I've never seen a guy that was really interested in a woman, loved a woman, and said, hey, listen, when you're looking at the menu, order from the cheap section. Right? No, generosity is automatic because love never puts a limit on things. Love considers it an absolute privilege to give. And that's why, see, something that we've mixed up at times, the Bible tells us, you and I were created in the image of God. And we get so caught up on physical attributes and characteristics, but let me tell you, God is spirit. One of the ways we understand, because mankind was to reflect, to be in the image of God means the reflection of God. Therefore, whenever we're generous, that is a reflection of the character and nature of God. Because God is love. And when you love others, and one of the most, I check my heart on this all the time, because listen, sometimes, and your heart can fool you in this respect, if you're not honest, sometimes when we give things, we often expect something in return. Like usually Christmas time, as much as it may be a joy, you get attitude if somebody ain't got nothing, if there's nothing under the tree for you. But the purest expression of God's love is doing something for somebody that is absolutely impossible for them to do anything in return for you. Amen. Giving it for the pure sake of benefiting, helping, and honoring somebody else, expecting nothing in return. And one of the things, listen to me, guys, when the New Testament church was birthed, what you discover, and you can look this up for yourself, when there was irrational generosity, when the community of faith came together and there was just elaborate generosity, where people no longer considered anything my own. If there was needs, here am I. I'm ready to meet it. What you can connect directly to it is God's power was released. Because why? The human heart is most revealed in this truth. Jesus said, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. In fact, he said you cannot serve two masters. The thing that competes most for the loyalty and affections of our heart is the stuff we've been entrusted with. How we handle our material possessions tell everything about the true devotion of our heart. Because does God have my heart? He has often our lips. He has often our confessions. But the truth is, does he have our heart? Because what we do with what we've been entrusted with is the indicator. That's the truth that can be seen in that end. So when we trust and believe that God is the provider of all good things, and no way can I ever be more generous than Almighty God, that when I understand the beauty and the desire of being like him, I can give freely. Why? Because I have received freely. And I'm going to tell you what, there's something amazing about that. And that's why this is so powerful to me, because it gives members of our congregation the opportunity to have individualized stories. Because what I've asked you to do, not just sponsor a child, but to build a relationship, to champion someone, to pray for someone, to know. And here's the powerful part to it. You might even be able to you will be able to if you want, but if you can make the time and availability, if you build a relationship, you can go on a mission trip, see that child, talk to that family. You may sit in the home of a family you've never met before, but you're connected by this bond of love. And that family was like, why would you even care? Why are you helping my child? Why is all this happening? And you can say, because of my love for God, I consider it an honor, a privilege to see God's work flourish in your child's life. And man, do you imagine? See how that's how the power of the kingdom multiplies and works. It's through generosity. And I told you, I'm trusting all of you. In fact, I'm believing, guys, that we're going to exceed everything that they have out there. There's going to be more than that and availability. So guess what? Don't be afraid today if there's not a packet left. But if I'm trusting all those packets will be gone and there'll be more people available to sponsor than there's currently packages. Because you know why? More children can be vetted. More children can be brought in. I committed a number up front, and I know that you guys always astound me with irrational generosity. Because what does it take? I mean, think about sponsoring a child. I thought about it this morning as I was praying. You're talking about 6 Starbucks a month. 4 meals instead of going out to lunch with your friends, just 4 times in a month that you bag it, take it, and you send that somewhere else. Does it take change in us? Yes. Whenever we allow generosity to motivate our heart, it requires something of us. But here's the good news. Whatever you do for God never goes unnoticed. And the power of partnerships, think about this. Paul wrote to the church in Philippi. And here's the point. The Philippian church became a model for the New Testament community. Because when Paul was writing to the Corinthians, he acknowledged what the Philippians had done. He said, out of their deep poverty and all of the challenges that they have been experiencing, overflowed a massive irrational generosity, which is why he could write to the Philippians and say, my God shall supply all of your need according to his riches and glory. So those Philippians understood, you know what? Nobody's requiring it of me. That's what love asks of me. And so I'm willing to freely give because I have been freely given to. Think about it. You and I in this room, most of us here are not of Jewish birth, okay? And the scriptures teach us, when Paul was writing to the Ephesian church, he said to them, we were once alienated from the covenants of promise. We were not a part of the commonwealth of Israel. We were without hope and without God in the world. But Jesus came and broke down all the barriers. And we who were once far off has he brought near. And he has brought us into the family of faith. That Jesus connected us to God. And it wasn't anything we did. It wasn't by works of righteousness we had done. But according to his mercy, he saved us with the washing and regeneration and renewing of the Holy Ghost. In other words, God demonstrated his love for you and I. When we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. So everything we have is the result of God's goodness, God's love, God's grace coming to us. And therefore, we should be willing to respond, because our love for God should always be in response to God's automatic love toward us because of Jesus. That's why looking for opportunities is the sense. So guys, when it comes down to it, as I was talking with Pastor Jose even this week, because I see so many opportunities where our church can build and foster greater and greater partnership, that we can help them continue to influence and reach their community. Just in talking, I realized one of the things, I talked about something, and I already got it. You remember the freedom curriculum I took us all through? You know, we did it all in groups, 2 years ago. Well, guess what, guys? I got it in Spanish. I already have it ready to be able to communicate it to them. It's just simple ways where we can begin to build a unity, a partnership. And you have a way to be both part of the corporate reality. In fact, if today you're not able to sponsor a child, you still can if it's on your heart to do something about it. We're going to give an opportunity for a one-time offering towards this, because there was a cost in getting all of this set up today. So you'll be able to when we take our regular offering. Okay? And I trust you guys on this front. Why do we teach that a tithe is an act of obedience? Because that's how God supplies for this house. But an offering is an act of generosity. When we go above and beyond, you'll have the opportunity to give an offering that goes above and beyond, if you want to, on that front towards this project, if you can't sponsor a trial right now. There's a way all of us can have a part of what God is doing in the midst of this. And that's what I love about the High Dare. That's why I thought it was brilliant. That's why I thought this is a Kairos moment. This is an opportunity where God's going to give a church here in the United States the opportunity to partner with a church in the Dominican Republic to reach a community through children who are the what? As we've talked about through this series, God identifies with the most vulnerable, with the most disadvantages in society. The God of the Bible is amazing, because that's what he taught his people, Israel. He said, listen, I am the father to the fatherless. No other deity ever claimed to identify with the most vulnerable, with the most disadvantaged in society. In fact, four groups that God constantly talked to the nation of Israel about: the poor, the widow, the orphan, and the alien. And he always reminded them where you came from. Remember, you were once slaves in Egypt, and I showed up, I got you out, I broke you out of that place. I brought you and gave you a land. I brought all of this to pass. Now I want you to remember, because the disadvantaged, the people in your midst, the alien, the foreigner that comes to live in your midst, don't treat them like they're somebody else. Love them like your own. Invite them to be a part of your community of faith. Embrace them, love them, care about the widow, care about the orphan. Don't allow those that society at large in the world that Israel was birthed out of was a very violent and difficult place, the most vulnerable. In fact, this is just a part of human history. It's still going on the earth today. It's in nations where the gospel's been affected, have changed their views on that. But guess what? You can go into places in our world today where you still see there's like a caste system, where you have the privileged and those that are disadvantaged. But you and I have a chance to make kingdom difference, not only here in this community. As I've told you guys, we've been serving this community. We're about to open our Dream Center. That'll talk to you about that in a second. But we've been serving this community for a long time. But guess what? God has blessed us, and we can be a blessing not only here, but we can do so abroad. Because why? That was the heart of New Testament churches, and that's what I believed we were up for, this opportunity and this challenge. So that's why it comes down to today. That's what I'm excited about, because you know what? When we go above and beyond, when we exhibit irrational generosity, I believe it causes the power and the glory of God to be released in ways that would no otherwise be able to accomplish, because God looks at the condition of our heart. When we have that viewpoint, God, I'm not here for what I can get. I'm here for what I can make a difference and do. Because these are situations that are eternal. That's why I asked you all to pray about it. That's why today this is important on this end. Because listen to me. You and I need to see this aspect of it. This is the heart of it. This is what Jesus showed. It's something I learned a long time ago. As I told you, the divine flow of love is the Holy Spirit comes into our hearts and he makes abundantly available the love of God. But the love of God is not just a feeling. The love of God is an action that follows the feeling. And so its essence today, here's what I want us to know. Here's the big idea today. Compassion begins as a feeling that moves us to act on behalf of another. See, compassion. When you feel something, we've had those situations. You feel bad, you see a situation, and you're like, oh man. But sometimes you can talk yourself out of it. It feels overwhelming. It feels like, oh man, what am I going to do? I can't do it. I can't save the whole world. No, you can't. But you can make a difference. And that's the key today. Because compassion must follow through to an action. In fact, the word compassion has such an amazing, its origin. In Hebrew, the word compassion is linked to a woman's womb. Because it's about the deep feelings that a mother has towards her children. But every mother in this house understands that her feelings are not where it stops. A mother doesn't just feel like, man, my kids need to eat. No, they're followed by actions because they want their kids to eat. They want their kids to eat well. Right? Okay, not Lucky Charms and Twinkies like our kids want, right? But what? No, moms, they care about their children, right? There's deep feelings inside, but you're followed by actions. Because when a child gets hurt, who do they run to? Mom or dad? Come on, be honest. Who do they run to? Mama, right? Why? Because those deep feelings, there's a side that women, because you got to remember, mankind was created in the image and likeness of God. Ladies, you get a bad rap on this, but let me tell you a biblical truth. You can go back and read this in Genesis 1 if you don't know it. In the image of God created he them, male and female. You don't see the full image of God until you see the male and the female. Why do you think the enemy has created so much anger and angst and attack against that idea that there's not male and female? Because that's a direct assault by hell against the glory of God. No, males and females are different, and they represent two sides of the glorious goodness of who God is. That's why the enemy wants to blur that. That's why there's so much confusion in our day. That's why all of this. But you and I, we represent something that way. But the word compassion in Hebrew and in the Greek language, the word compassion, this is something the Greeks believe that compassion came from, listen, they believe it came from the spleen. Now, not much about anatomy and physiology, but listen, it's because what they were connecting was there's a deep feeling within. The compassion flowed out of something deep within. But compassion, if it's true compassion, must be connected to an action. In fact, take a look with me for just a few minutes. We checked with a few scriptures. Look at this. In the ministry of Jesus, Mark chapter 6 and verse 34, and Jesus, when he came out, saw a great multitude and was moved with compassion for them because they were like sheep not having a shepherd. So he began to teach them. In other words, Jesus wasn't just moved with compassion. He did something with what he was moved to do, right? He saw a need, and compassion caused him to meet a need. In fact, look at this. In Mark chapter 1, let me give you the context of it, a leper. And in the days of Jesus, lepers were alienated from society. They had to remain out in leper colonies. They could not come among the people of Israel because they were considered to be unclean. And therefore, to touch an unclean person would make you unclean. But a leper heard about Jesus. And so he comes running Because he has this compassion. He's like, Jesus! He cries out, Jesus! I know you can, but are you willing? I know you can change my situation, but are you willing? Because many of us believe God's powerful enough. The question we struggle with is God willing? But I love this because look at this. Mark 1:41, and Jesus, moved with compassion, stretched out his hand. In other words, compassion never lets the situations of culture limit your ability to do for others what needs to be done. See, so many times, oh, that's somebody else's responsibility. Let somebody else do it. No, Jesus, he reached out and touched him and said to him, I'm willing, be cleansed. Because Jesus believed that wherever hell had made a mess, I'm here to reverse the curse. I'm here to make a difference. And guess what? Greater is he who is in you. You have the same ability to make a difference in the life of somebody else. You can release heaven over a situation just as much as Jesus did. Because compassion is always associated with an action. Remember the story that Jesus was approached by a lawyer and said, what do I do to attain eternal life? And Jesus tells this famous parable of the Good Samaritan. But notice this end of it in Jesus' story. He said, but a certain Samaritan who journeyed came where he was. And when he saw him, he had compassion. Because remember, the man had asked the question, who's my neighbor? Loving my neighbor as myself, who's my neighbor? And what does that look like? And Jesus' story so illustrates it. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and he saw him and had compassion. So he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. In other words, he didn't pass by and say, well, that's the government's responsibility. Oh, that's the temple's responsibility. That's not mine. No, he saw a need and he allowed compassion to move him to get involved to meet a need. Why? Because compassion always has an action related to it. Let me just give you this last one. Look at it. In Matthew 14:14. And Jesus went out and saw a great multitude, and he was moved with compassion for them and healed their sick. You see, healing even is a direct result of God's compassion. See, that's why we need to be moved in that respect. Do you know that God, if you allow the Holy Spirit to move you, to pray for people, to believe God for people, that God, he says believers will lay hands on the sick. Why do you limit God's use of your life to the situation? Oh, I'm not a pastor. No, God can use any one of us. When you allow compassion to lead you, it's the divine flow of love. Because that's how God operates. That's entering the stream and allowing the Spirit to take you wherever it leads. And so listen to me. Today, you have an opportunity to put feet to your faith. As I ask you to pray, if it's on your heart to be a part of this today, you say, well, you know what? None of us can do it all, right? You can get overwhelmed. I talked about that. Sometimes people become paralyzed because of the needs of our world. I can't do everything. No, you can't. But you can do something. And here's what I want you to wrestle with today. Listen, it's my last point. Listen. Compassion should cause us to do for one what we wish we could do for all. Compassion should cause us to do for one what we wish we could do for all. No, we can't do everything. We can't meet all the needs. We can't change everything that's going on in our community, nor in the Dominican Republic. But you can do for one what you wish you could do for all. And today is that opportunity. Today, if the Spirit of God has moved in your heart in some capacity, let compassion cause you to do for one what you wish you could do for all. Because a vision, listen to me, a vision is what could be and should be. Let me show you something before I end today. This is the pictures. I didn't go on to that. But look at, this is Pastor Jose's church. I'm throwing the guys up in the booth off, but this is Pastor Jose's church. I visited this church, okay? This is Pastor Jose showing us his neighborhood. He took us on a walk. This is where he lives. This is where we're working in partnership with him. That's Pastor Jose taking us through. He's got a powerful story himself, but this is the community that he lives in. Keep going through, guys. This is some of the streets. He's known there because his story is known for the community. This is their beach. This is their beach. And look, but we come back, here's Pastor Jose's church. Here's a picture of me with Pastor Juan, Pastor Jose, Pastor Randall, and Pastor Jose's wife. See, guys, this is where we're forming a partnership. This is where we're working together because we believe God has blessed us, and we can be a blessing. So you can be a part of it because the Hope Center is the beginning. It's a journey of empowering that church to reach their community through the children of their community, made possible because a church in the United States cares about the condition of the children in that community and empower it. Your giving is what makes possible all the supplies, all the things they're going to do for those children and their families. You get a chance to make a difference somewhere in the world. So today, all I'm asking you to do is allow compassion to cause you to do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. Amen.